Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have two lovely guests to introduce to you now. Dr. Cory Jenks is a returning guest on our show. Be sure to check out his first appearance on episode 440 of Boundless Body Radio. Cory Jenks earned his Doctor of Pharmacy degree from the University of South Carolina in 2011. Since then, he has practiced as a retail pharmacist, outpatient clinical pharmacist, and inpatient clinical pharmacist. His current practice is as an ambulatory care clinical pharmacy specialist, where he applies his passion for lifestyle interventions in the management of chronic disease. In addition to his career as a pharmacist, Cory is also an accomplished improv comedian, having started on his comedy journey in 2013. Since then, Cory has coached, taught, and performed improv for thousands of people. Today, Cory travels around the country, speaking and teaching other healthcare professionals how to apply the valuable skills of improv comedy to create a more adaptable, empathetic, and humanizing healthcare experience. Cory lives in Tucson, Arizona with his wife, Cassie, who we are absolutely honored to host on the podcast, as we have not heard her full story until today. Cory and Cassie, welcome both of you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you for having us. Apparently I made a decent enough impression to be back, or the real star is my wife. So that was
It's debatable.
It's not debatable.
Yeah.
She's the real star.
It's debatable. We'll let the audience decide on that. Cassie, so awesome to have you on the show. I purposely left stuff out of the introduction about you because I really don't know much about your story, and I'm so curious to hear it today. I want to start with the birthday post that your husband made for you, which was lovely. We actually recorded that episode on your birthday, so thank you for watching the kids on your birthday so we could record. And he posted a name card from Blockbuster Video and said, "My wife is this old."
Yes, I'm old enough that one of my jobs in college was working at Blockbuster. And the irony there is I know very little about movies. So it was really terrifying when people would ask me for recommendations because I would just point to whatever was, highlighted that week.
I mean, that's probably fine. Remember the hours on like a first date or something? You'd walk up and down the aisles and try to decide like, what you were going to watch that night. Like, could never decide.
That's more fun and active than sitting on your rear, like scrolling through Netflix, trying to figure out what you want to watch. At least there's a distinct number of things in a Blockbuster, and it's like tactile and it's fun, and I can still smell all the garbage food that's in there. But it's a fond memory, regardless.
Totally. I asked Cory this last time, but do you have any like great stories from working at Blockbuster?
I can't say any great ones. It really wasn't super exciting. Probably the most embarrassing thing I had to do is we would push sales for our monthly subscription, and I'd have to walk around wearing this like hideous smock and walk up to people who are they're just trying to do that, what we were just talking about, pick out a movie, like, hey, leave me alone, I'm just browsing titles here, and have to interject myself and try and sell them a 10 for a month. And that it made me want to do something else with my life other than retail. It's a good experience to have as a young person.
I would hate that part of it too. So when you were working there, was it any VHS tapes or was it fully DVDs at that point?
I think there was still maybe some archaic ones, mostly DVD at that point.
Okay, but a few Uncle Bucks you maybe had to be kind and rewind for somebody.
Very, very rare.
That's amazing. Well, literally the only reason to have Twitter is to follow the last Blockbuster on Twitter. I don't know if they're active anymore, but they have amazing, hysterical posts like disregard the store closing sign that wasn't supposed to go up until next week, or like it's not our fault that like the popcorn butter burned you, or like it would have like the May like picks of the month where it would say like Thomas recommends the B movie, Caitlin was laid off, Jeff, he's been laid off. Like it's really good. So if you need some yucks that'll take you back to your Blockbuster days, that's the only reason to have Twitter for sure.
I'll have to check that out.
That sounds about the most productive way of using Twitter, or at least maybe least destructive way. There's productive ways of using it, but that sounds that's a good recommendation. I'll take you up on that one.
I think for a very long time, it was the only thing I ever followed on Twitter, and now I follow way more things and I hate it. So I might just cut everybody and go back to just following that because it was a lot of fun. Oh man! So in our last episode, Cory, you and I chatted about all kinds of different things. Your career with your being a pharmacist. We talked about your book. We talked about improv comedy. And as we were exchanging emails after that and exchanging Simpsons quotes back and forth, you said, "Hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we pull my wife in to maybe talk about like how we are deliberately kind of raising our family into a more healthy environment?" and I couldn't send you a calendar invite fast enough to put that on the calendar. I'm so glad we did. I'm so glad to have this conversation today. But Cory, if we could start with you, will you just remind the audience who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I'm a pharmacist. I've been a pharmacist since 2011, and around 2016, Cassie and I we were up in Sedona, driving around for, if you want to know how old we are, that was our 30th year. So we were doing 30 things did a 30 for 30 things for our 30th birthday. One of them was Sedona in the Grand Canyon. And we had stumbled across some kind of low carb podcast information, and we're curious healthcare professionals. She's a nurse practitioner. I work in diabetes management. So in my role, I kind of, to the lay audience, think of me as like a physician's assistant. Where I work under providers that give me a scope of practice, collaborative practice agreement, whatever you want to call it. But it just basically means that I can write prescriptions for medicines within certain classes, including diabetes and obesity, which I specialize in. Now, in 2016, we were kind of doing the same old low-fat, count your calorie thing and managing, I'll use the air quotes here, managing diabetes with what I do. I wasn't giving my life bunny ears, I was doing air quotes. We're very tight here for those of you on audio. But it's one of those things where you hear it and you're like, we were curious. We'd always been healthy, fit people, but we're always looking for a new challenge too. We're very competitive. So, we did a vegetarian month, which we call our cheese and peanut butter month. We did a no sugar month, but we came across some low carb info, and I could name all the names, but if you listen to this podcast, Nina Teicholz, Jason Fung, all those people, you read the books, you listen to them talk, and we were like, this is actually really different than what we were taught, but it's intriguing. And so we start living that lifestyle, feeling better. Like we didn't have 50 pounds to lose, but I would think both would say, it's a subjective improvement in our physical and mental health. And then with what I do, I get to implement that with my patients. And so that's what I do these days, is doing my best to de-prescribe medicines, get patients off medications, improve their lifestyle, get them moving, get them active. And it's a lot more effective than throwing drugs at people. So,
and then when we approached, you talked about like raising our kids this way. We were really lucky to have discovered this before having children. So when I first got pregnant, it was already on our mind of like, okay, what's nutrition going to look like pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, and then as we're raising our children, how do we want to approach that? So that's just from day one, something that was really important to us. So I think that was a helpful thing. If your kids are already used to eating a certain way and they're a certain age, and then you try and make a change, it's definitely a different challenge than starting right from day minus 9 months.
Right. No, that's a really great point. I love that. Now, the first podcast you guys heard was whoever was hosting Vinny Tortorich. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, it was Adam Carolla. So Vinny Tortorich, the NSNG guy on Adam Carolla, because I'm a comedian, so I like to listen to comedy podcasts. So weirdly, this interest in comedy led me down the sort of professional route that I'm in now too. So when I'm not emceeing Low Carb Denver and doing talks on improv for healthcare, I'm still a practicing pharmacist, and I can owe a lot of my, what I do and how I practice to listening to the comedy. So he was our gateway drug to the world, and we have not looked back because you can't unsee it. So
So true. So true. We've hosted Vinny twice on the show. NSNG means no sugar, no grain. You couldn't make it any more simple and easy to understand. And when I was at KetoCon a few weeks ago, I got invited by a group of total strangers who are all part of his NSNG kind of group. And it was amazing. It was a wonderful evening. We just sat out back at this divey barbecue joint, and just everybody got to share a little bit of their stories. And they were on wherever they were in their journey to get to metabolic health, but just by following no sugar, no grain, and just using that as a foundation, they were able to make huge improvements. And it was so inspiring to get to chill out with them and hear all their stories. And the link to him, Vinny himself, was really cool.
Well, and I love the simplicity of it. So here we, and just Cassie, she's a nurse practitioner. I don't mean to take the words out of your mouth, but
yeah, that's okay. Yeah. I'm a nurse practitioner, and I work in the metabolic health space too. So I get to see this and do it every day too.
But we spend so much money. We make healthcare so complicated. We both have seen patients with crazy drug regimens for diabetes, high blood pressure, and then you literally throw 4 letters at someone and get more bang for your buck than the billions of dollars we throw with people at medicines. It's like a testament to, this isn't an ode to Vinny show, but he got us going. But it's a testament to what he's been able to do and distill down for simplicity, which is what I try to do for my patients, as opposed to the expensive, complicated, twisting road of disease state air quality management, where patients just sort of keep getting sicker. We try to manage their symptoms versus reversing the darn disease.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I would love to have been in the backseat of that car as you guys were literally learning and hearing about this for the first time. What was the discussion like between the two of you as you're listening to this? It must have sounded insane.
Well, a lot of it was turn left here, go right, you're missing your turn. That's just how we drive. But I think there was a lot of pausing, a lot of like, I don't how, like it was.
I honestly, once I started diving into some of the research on it and reading the different authors, my initial reaction was anger. Like I was angry that I'd been given bad advice and I had been passing that on to others. And as a, busy provider in a clinic, I'm not equipped to sift through decades and decades of research on the fly. So I'm reading these books from these incredible investigative journalists who have done that legwork. And it just put me down this rabbit hole of being much more critical of the evidence we use to make decisions, more critical of the organizations that give us our guidelines. And so I probably had a good year of that was my reaction, just frustrated and angry. And then once I let that settle down, then it kind of turned more to, okay, this is where we're at. Nobody, woke up one day and said, I'm trying to make the whole world unhealthy. So what can we do now? How can we move forward to spread this message? And our family definitely got tired of hearing us talk about it. I think that was kind of where our first channel of our energy went, was just everybody we would talk to. We just couldn't help but be like, hey, did you know that there's this other way of doing things? You could feel a lot better. You could try it. And thankfully, then we both got into positions where we could use it in our career, because our families kind of got tired of hearing us talk about it.
Yeah, and I'd say in the car, like the initial reaction probably was like disbelief, like, no way. How could we do this wrong? There's no way that we've been, no. Okay, maybe, what? Well, again, all right, maybe.
And the no sugar, I don't feel like that one's a stretch, right? Nobody's going to sit here and tell you that sugar's good for you. So that was kind of easy. It was more
some of the companies probably for the healthy, balanced caloric intake, right? But yeah, the grain thing, like, and her father farms still, so wheat wheat, corn, and soy, three staple crops. So he certainly is a little harder to convince. But we've had family members that, as much as we talked about it, they got tired of hearing it. They implemented it, and then like you had a sister that like she had to like keep weight on. She couldn't stop losing weight. Other people in our family sort of like, with the Chris Palmer world of the mental health side of things, like having drastic improvements in the behavior of kids. So, and then when they try other foods again, seeing the drastic poor behavior of those kids, it's like, well, okay, we can't deny the reality of what's going on here. So Also, I feel like you would have been a fun road trip buddy. So I wish you had been in the back of that.
I'm good, dude. I'm a good co-pilot. I'll feed you fries or whatever. Like I'll do the orientation, like all that stuff. Great navigation. So you kind of gave it away by saying investigative journalist, but if you felt anger, you read Nina for sure. That's the reaction to the Big Cat Surprise.
Yeah, Nina Teicholz and Gary Taubes were the two big ones in that realm, and then of course there's many other authors who have a different slice of the pie to share. But they're just that history part of it was the part that I got just enraged about. But
yeah, no, I totally don't blame you. I was actually aware of the Big Fat Surprise for quite a while before I actually picked it up and read it, and I think it was an internal resistance of like, if this is right, and I it must be right. I think it might be right. Everything I've learned about nutrition and fitness is going to be wrong, and I think I really resisted that. I was open to having people eat fat, but the idea that you didn't have to have grains, you didn't have to have that kind of stuff as the main portion of your meal was like, I don't know. I really resisted it before I dove in, and I felt really angry too. But Cassie, tell me a little about your history with the medical profession. Is this something you always wanted to get into and always wanted to practice? I know that Cory told us he didn't do, what did you say, fluids and something else?
Yeah, I don't do fluids and holes. That's why I'm a pharmacist.
Fluids and holes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very eloquent, technical way to say it. Most of the lay members of our audience might not understand, but yeah, Cassie, how about you?
If we're being that graphic, my nursing background started as an ICU nurse, so I did all the fluids and holes.
Wow. Yes, you did.
Well, we make it great. We complement each other well.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I loved that environment and the hustle and bustle, but then you just kind of, the adrenaline wears off and you're ready for something new. So I went back to school and got my nurse prac degree. And I had this vision, I was going to be like a family doc, family provider, and just really know my patients and have these relationships. And then you realize you get 15 minutes or less with each person. And it's really just not my idea of what it would be like, wasn't the world it was. So I out of school, I went into a pulmonary clinic. I went to a specialty. I was already at the VA and I stayed there, and that was a really great place to start, a great place to work. But once we started learning about metabolic health, then I knew I want to do something with that, and not a lot of opportunity for that in a pulmonary clinic, a little bit, people come in with COPD, sleep apnea. There's some room to talk about weight loss, but it wasn't the majority of what I got to do. And then I got really lucky to get a phone call from a little company called Virta Health, if you've heard of them. And
absolutely.
They were looking for providers. So I've been with them for over 2 years now. And so I get to work with them, having a panel of patients that I get to help manage going through starting and staying on a ketogenic diet. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay.
I get jealous because every day she's just like clicking on her computer, like, oh, stop insulin on somebody. And I'm not jealous. I'm excited for the patients and for her. But as the infrastructure that I work under in a traditional doctor's office is less. As it takes a lot of support to implement a diet and keep people on it. And so you do the best you can in the environment you're in, but it's just so heartening to hear all the positive stories from her.
And even with all the remote care support we're able to provide and the coaching, there's still challenges. And so I think that's the part that we all have to remember is lifestyle change is hard. It's one thing to know what you should do. It's really hard to implement. But the success stories don't get old. I love showing Cory the graphs of look at these blood sugars coming down. This is amazing. That part just never gets old.
So cool. I love that. I would assume that most of our listeners know who Virta is, but for those who don't, maybe you could share a little bit about what they do, what's the mission, and then we can talk about maybe some of the results that they're seeing, because it is insane.
Yeah, so the company started, I didn't prep for this, but I want to say 2015 or 2016. Sorry if I'm getting that number wrong.
Sounds about right.
Sammy Inkinen is the CEO, and he went on his own journey of being a super fit athlete and was pre-diabetic. It was like, wait a minute, what's going on? Started diving into the research, got connected with Steve Finney, and together they co-founded a company where our mission is to reverse diabetes in 100 million people. And it's a lofty goal, but you got to set your sights high. And our basic platform is we're using continuous care delivered through an app. So patients have constant access to the resources we provide. They have a coach who's helping them work through that behavior side of things. And then every patient has a provider like myself, monitoring blood sugars, adjusting medications. And so it's really a thorough, medically supervised app, tech-driven way of delivering healthcare. And we focus on diabetes, prediabetes, and obesity right now. That could certainly change in the future, but I think we got enough diabetes to work on still before we worry about branching out. And so patients are able to come to us directly, or a lot of times their insurance will pay for it. And so they'll get coverage through insurance and join in our program, and we'll get them started on the ketogenic lifestyle and help them work through that.
That's so amazing. So I know you don't have the numbers in front of you, but there are ongoing trials that are being done, randomized controlled trials on some of these patients. Trying a ketogenic diet, like you said, getting some help along the way and getting coaching. Can you speak a little bit to the results that we're seeing that Virta is providing us with?
Yeah, so that's one really cool thing. Research has always been an important part to the company. So they've dedicated resources and staff to always make that important. And there's a 5-year trial in process, so stay tuned for that. But the 2-year trial, I believe the diabetes reversal rates were in the 60s. Now, again, I'm sorry, I did not prepare by reviewing that before. But you compare that to standard of care being
1%,
maybe 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
So it's pretty incredible what we've been able to achieve.
Well, that word reversed, that, what I talked to Cory about this last time we chatted, that word could not have been in your lexicon when it came to chronic disease before. Is that correct?
Was not something that we really talked about. As an ambulatory primary care pharmacist, our job is disease state management. We manage it. We manage the symptoms. We manage the numbers. we give you medicines to try to keep it under control. But the reversal was something that was very rare if we ever saw. So that wasn't a, it wasn't a, like, sadly, it wasn't a goal. It was, just something that some people did really well. Occasionally someone did a really good job with their lifestyle, or their A1C is now under 6. Great. But yeah, the reversal is a new way of looking at it, which I think should be the way of looking at it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if you recall at Low Carb Denver, but Dr. Mariella Glamp presented, in her presentation, she had one of her clients who she's been working with, one of her patients, and she said, like, this was a success back in the day. Like, his blood pressure was high, he was on 8 different medications, but he was kind of maintaining. He was 60 pounds overweight, and she was like, we used to call this success. Like, this was a well-maintained human, and it's like, it's really not. We're just losing a sense of like what we can actually do to help people and really truly reverse chronic disease. It must have just completely lit you up to see that.
Yeah, it's a story that I get angry at. Like, when we consider success 20 meds and an A1C of 6.8% and someone 50 pounds overweight, that bugs me, to put it nicely. So, redefining what success is and doing that with the lifestyle approach, I think, is really, really key.
Yeah, that's amazing. For you, Cassie, was there any particular health issues that you were kind of dealing with at the time that switching over to a low carbohydrate or ketogenic helped for you?
I can't pinpoint anything that stood out before I started, but once I changed my lifestyle, then I started to realize things improving. I didn't have energy crashes in the afternoon. Mood was more even. I can honestly say I have more energy now. We did the math earlier. So I'm 37. I have 2 small children and I'm over 8 months pregnant. And I swear I still have more energy now than I did when I was 22 drinking Diet Coke and having Pop-Tarts for breakfast. Because the energy and the mental evenness is just amazing. And then, maybe probably some like gut, like, some bloating and discomfort there that really went away when I cut out the greens and the high sugar foods.
Yeah. All of that just so consistent with everything I see with all of my clients as well, and all the stories you hear out there. Cory, if you could remind our audience what things you noticed a change in your own health.
Well, I chilled out a lot. So pharmacists are typically pretty type A. They were uptight. And so changing my diet, I chilled out a lot. Like I started my improv comedy before I changed my diet, but I will say that I always thought, how am I going to handle having 2 kids? I get stressed out trying to park, which I still do, but I'm still I'm much more mellow. I'm much more even, much less anxious. For me, one of the big things was hunger. Like I had to eat like every 2 hours before. I felt hungry all the time. And now, like, I'll go, with kids, if you're not, kids can make you eat because you're stressed. But if you're busy and you're going all day, or I'm out doing a talk, or I'm at work and I have a busy day, like I go all day without eating. I don't even really think twice about it. I start, and then I'm like, oh yeah, it's time to eat. And I'm like, am I really that hungry? And then I'm like, I guess I am. It's this amazing superpower. Now we could talk about food environment, but you put me in a food environment, I'm like, I'm not hungry, but I want to eat all that. But I would say like the mental health relaxation, the hunger, and then just, the energy. Like she's a cougar, I'm 36. So, but yeah, like I just thought about it. Like I ran into someone from high school the other day and they're like, man, it's been 20 years. And I'm like, I don't feel any different than high school. If anything, I feel better. Like I don't get sore. I don't get, I get tired because my kids don't sleep, but otherwise, like I feel physically as capable, if not more so, than I did when I was younger.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'll be turning 40 this next year, and I feel the same way. Like I feel way better now than I did 10 years ago, even. Like it's such a vast difference. And even in just what you said, like the mental clarity, the stillness, the calmness, little things just don't really bug you. They don't get on under your skin the same way that they do when you're eating a different diet. And I think a lot of people are surprised to see that. And Cassie, you made a good point. You don't really understand that doesn't have to be the case. You don't appreciate it because you don't know what the other side is going to be like.
Right. You think this is just normal because you don't know any different.
Yeah, exactly. You also made a really good point earlier that both of you were able to go into parenting very consciously, thinking about food. So what were your conversations like when you were talking about like starting a family and having kids?
Well, I think if I had to recommend one two authors for prenatal nutrition, I would say Deep Nutrition by Kate Shanahan, and then anything from Lily Nichols. Those are both books we had read before we had started the fun conception part of kids, the fun part, right? So the conversations we had pre-kid were eating as healthily as possible, removing as many of the potentially offending foods. I know Kate Shanahan talks a lot about the seed oil things. Lily Nichols talks a lot about getting sufficient protein. So those are both things that with our first kid, we were really conscious of. And by the second one, I think we're hyper conscious of. And now with this one, we're like hyper ultra conscious. And I think what I liked about it was it's not just on the female, like the male's health plays a big role as well. It's not just, putting it all on the ladies. So it was something that we both were very mindful of. And we're also both mindful of, like, we did everything within our control. For anyone listening, like, there's only so much within our control. Like, if anything happens, like, we don't need to feel bad or shame people, but we were very focused on sufficient protein, a lot of nutrients. And then once the kids were here, it was making sure for you getting enough nutrition for breastfeeding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And certainly not a season to worry about limiting calories or
getting back to weight.
Worried about, little fluff is okay. But yeah, really always prioritizing protein, very little sugar that doesn't come in the form of fruit or real food. And to any pregnant mamas out there, give yourself some grace. It's really hard. And if you're just really need some carbs, because that's what your body needs right now, because you're nauseous or sick, that's okay. It's not to be like carbs are demonized, but to just think about everything you're eating as, what am I getting from this to support my body and my baby? Generally, you're thinking protein and your micronutrients. So eggs, I eat eggs every day, always, meat with almost every meal. Certainly non-meat protein's a great option too for people who choose that route. And then
once the kids were here, so we breastfed, and then he starts eating about 6 months.
6 months.
But our rule was nothing sweet until 1 year old. So
not even fruit,
because we didn't want them, both our boys, getting a taste for sweet and like only wanting that instead of whatever other And we didn't give them baby food. We just give them smaller portions of our food. So they got cut up hamburger, cut up chicken, cut up veggies, cut up avocados. And then at 1, they got to have fruit, big whoop. They didn't do the birthday cake smash on their first birthday. They did not get anything. But at 2,
I made muffins with blueberries. So they did get their muffin with whipped cream.
Yeah. Homemade heavy whipping cream. Yeah. And then at 2, they get dark chocolate. Like that was their first
dark chocolate too.
And I can't remember. I think Dr. Shanahan talks about it in her book, like that sort of laying down the network of your taste preferences early in life. So like after 2, we're a little bit more liberal, like at school, like for Christmas, like Santa brought milk and cookies, and we just had to let it go because at this point, it's going to be more traumatic and eating disorder inducing if mom and dad don't let you have a cookie with Christmas for Santa, then, making sure nothing sweet touches your lips. So the first 2 years, super crucial. Like they never had a soda at this point. They had ice cream we'll make our homemade ice cream, which is just like heavy whipping cream and frozen berries. And they had real ice cream for the first time a couple months ago. So like we're pretty strict, but as they get older, we've loosened up. And it was hardest on the grandparents because they just want to like treat the kids. Mm-hmm. But to anyone, like to the grandparents or to anyone listening, my argument is like, do you remember the piece of cake you had at 2? What's your favorite cookie you had when you were 2 years old? You don't. So you don't remember it, but it's going to mess up your like taste preferences, possibly. So I realized, although if you're listening to this podcast, this sounds pretty sane, but many people that we encounter were like very politely like, you're kind of crazy. And that's the hill that we decided to die on, was like nutrition. And we could talk about screens, but this is a nutrition podcast. But we really were much more strict. And then like just in the last couple of weeks, my mom was like, you took them for ice cream? I'm like, yeah. She's like, can we take them for ice cream? I'm like, sure. Give them some real food first. Give them some protein first. But yeah, at this point, it's not like game on anything you want, but now it's the balance of let them be being a normal kid now is eating sugar and crap with every meal, but letting them have a little treat here and there after they've gotten their nutrition is probably more beneficial than making them hate us and limiting everything forever.
Yeah.
And I would say this last year has been a big evolution for us because our children were at an in-home daycare. So we would bring their food and they would be fed what we brought them. So we really had like total control over their food environment, which was really lovely, but not sustainable as they get older and not really realistic for everyone at every age. And so now that they're in a preschool, the preschool is amazing and they really work with us. And like we explain to them, here's our preferences. And so they'll check with us, is it okay if we give them this or that? And so that's been really great. But like Cory said, we don't want it to become more of a battle with them. So I think our overall approach as they're getting older is this is how we eat at home. We don't make a big deal out of it. When they're out and about in the world, if they have a piece of candy, if they have a cookie, life will go on. And we try to put really a little energy into it to not make it a big deal, but to put that boundary of like, this is how we eat. Our 5-year-olds will ask, is there too much sugar in this for me? I don't know if that's a good thing or if it means we're kind of maybe causing some problems down the road. Maybe we'll check it. We'll do a podcast in like 10 years and we'll tell you how this is panning out in the long run.
Oh, in 10 years when he's a teenager, yeah. We're like, well, our kids hate us no matter what we say.
Exactly.
But yeah, just taking that, like Cory said, those first couple of years being your really like laser focus, and then gradually understanding they're going to be in the world, they're going to be exposed to everywhere they go. There's food on a shelf, so they have to.
It's not your job as parents.
Right.
That's not your job. Like Cory and I talked about stoicism last time, and like there are things you can control and things you can't control. And inside the home, you are the parents. You're acting like parents. You set the ground rules and the boundaries, like you said. When they go out on the world, you can't live their life for them as much as you probably want to helicopter parent them as much as possible with everything they do. You can't do it. Nobody could do that for you when you were a kid. You were going to go out and you always eat whatever you wanted whenever you could. So I really just love that approach. I think you guys do it in a way that's really measured and balanced and is not too far over the top.
Yeah, and then the other thing to throw out too is just the balance of interacting with other parents, because you don't want to come to a group setting and say, no, my kid can't have that food you're giving your kid because I think it's bad. You don't want to project like a judgment on others, because that's not fair. And I think everyone's doing the best they can. So finding that balance of how to talk about it with other parents, how to talk about it with your kids in public in a way that is supporting what your goals are, but not projecting like judgment on others. So that's the other piece that I think could be a delicate balance.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I want to go back and talk about your pregnancies. Did your diet have to vastly change when you were going from your normal kind of low carb to then being pregnant? You mentioned eggs, but were there other foods that you were more mindful of bringing into? Did your taste buds change? Was it different trimesters? Like, how was that?
Yeah, each pregnancy is a little different. I had some nausea in the beginning and some food aversions where like I honestly would want carbs. I'd feel nauseous and just want some popcorn, and so I'd have a little popcorn, but the big picture, like my diet really hasn't changed much between non-pregnant and pregnant, maybe other than being a little more indulgent and not worrying about how much heavy cream I put in things, since my body needs the extra energy right now. And then there's a few things you're supposed to not eat when you're pregnant. And by a third pregnancy, I couldn't tell you what that list is right now. I could have told you with my first. So, there's you be mindful of your, I think, certain seafoods, and you're supposed to heat up your deli meat and things like that. But for the most part, I go back to eggs because there's such a great, just like powerhouse of micronutrients. I feel like if I at least eat a couple eggs a day when I wasn't feeling well, then I knew I was getting a good bolus of choline and folate and all those good vitamins the baby needs.
I think it's a good sign that her diet really didn't have to change much between pre-pregnancy and pregnancy. It's going back, kind of transitioning into like raising our kids and feeding them. I think we're very, as you say, we're very fortunate we found this before we had kids, because the way we eat in our house is just the way we eat in our house, and our kids don't know any different. And it's not like mommy and daddy are having ice cream sundaes and telling our kids not to have sweets. Like, we're all eating the same things. Like when we have an after dinner treat, like our son literally has, we call it blueberry cereal, and it's frozen blueberries with milk on it. And that's his treat. And it's super weird to like an outsider probably, but he's getting whole food. He gets his little sweet tooth craving satisfied, but it's, you know, as a parent, you want to emulate how your kids behave. So we got those habits down pretty well before our kids came along. And so we just keep bopping along. And you know, having kids is a lot of work. It's a lot of extra inputs. And so if you're already in that similar mindset and habit of eating healthfully as much as you can, cooking your own food, like I tell it, like she does all the hard work. She's the woman, she's pregnant, she's up with the kids at night because they want her. I do all the cooking. And I just told her the other day, like, I'm so tired of prepping food, because we send them their lunches. We make their own lunches, you know, every day. We make our own dinners almost every night is something prepared. And it's work. Like, I can't lie and be like, it's easy. Like it takes mindful work to do it. But to us, that is, again, that foundation of their health is the nutrition. And this is not to put feathers in our little caps, but we've talked to the teachers at school, and we're kind of known as the healthy people. Like there was some school event and they had hot dogs, and like our son got a hot dog, and the teacher's like, the Jenks kids are getting a hot dog? Yes. You're letting them have the bun with the hot dog? Like, yes, we are. So that's sort of our reputation at the school.
That's cool. That's cool. I love that. Now, so you mentioned Deep Nutrition by Dr. Kate Shanahan, and there's parts of the book that you get the impression. I love the book, by the way. It's one of those that I like just keep in my car. If I have to wait for like my tires to get rotated or something, I can open it up to any chapter and learn like I'm reading it for the first time. It's amazing, so well written. But you also get the impression from that like you might have to eat like salmon roe, or you might have to have a huge amount of liver or tripe, or you know, there's really like exotic foods that are, you know, kind of like recommended, and you think like, if we make this too difficult for people, they're not going to do it. Nobody's going to eat that. I don't do that, and I'm into health and nutrition. I'm obsessed with this stuff. I don't do that. So it's really encouraging to hear that your diet didn't really change all that much. What was the difference in like the caloric intake? You know, moms say I'm eating for 2 now, and so they double their caloric intake. How much more would you say you were eating?
That is such a good question. And working for a company where I'm asking people to track their dietary intake all the time, I should be able to tell you this. I honestly don't know. I just kind of let my hunger guide me. I'm just trying to trust that my body, if I'm hungry, then I should eat. And if I'm not, then that's okay. So, you know, if I wake up and I'm not hungry for breakfast, that's okay. And if I'm ravenous for lunch, I might eat more than a grown man would. So I can't really tell you because I haven't tracked it to be able to know. But to your point about, yeah, it doesn't have to be exotic and complicated. A couple of the really simple things we do kind of along the Kate Shanahan approach, we do a lot of like slow cooked meats with the bone. So maybe I'm not a big liver fan, but at least I'm getting some marrow nutrients. I'm not going to suck the marrow out of the bone because I don't want to do it. He does it. I want to make myself do it. I just haven't yet. I'm sure it's delicious, but now you're getting that nice slow cooked nutrient there. Or we buy a ground beef that has like an organ meat mix in it, and then add another pack of ground beef to that. So it changes the flavor slightly. You're getting some of those nutrients, but it doesn't mean you have to like liver pate to still get some.
And our boys love it. Oh my gosh, they eat the organ meat mix up like crazy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to watch.
That's amazing.
Go at it. So yeah, and we do a lot of like gelatin. So we'll make these like chocolate electrolyte gelatin beverages. It's so, again, very weird, but it's a way to get some more of that collagen, that gelatin, that connective tissue stuff going on. So yeah, maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not, maybe we're crazy and wrong. I see that could be the case, but I find them yummy, and I don't like coffee, so it's my hot beverage, you know, every few days. So
nice. Yeah, I love that. You guys are making this so simple and approachable. Like, I wonder how we were able to survive as a species before calorie trackers and all the baby books. Like, I'm guessing you read very few, if any, baby books, and
we read like 3.
There you go.
Yeah, we picked 3 or 4 parenting books, and then it's like Deep Nutrition. We just go back to them mostly when we're trying to deal with our kids' toddler behavior. So yeah, and I will do a shameless plug. I actually just submitted a new book to a publisher. It's a humorous guide to being a dad, and there will be a little snippet of nutrition in there. So speaking of trying to make parenting, speaking of not reading parenting books, read mine when it comes out. So, but yeah, but like anyways, just to go back to it. Yeah, keeping it like kids are complicated, life gets complicated. So we really try to keep things as simple as possible.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Going back to the pregnancy and the limitation for time on sugar, that starts in the womb. Like this is why kids are coming out being born in a state of insulin resistance somewhat, because they are swimming in this bath of carbohydrate and sugar inside the body. And so the body is preparing itself to release more sugar because that's what it's going to have to do in that environment. So it's amazing that you were so thoughtful about that, not just after the kid was born, but through your pregnancy, because that would have been like coming off a drug addiction.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a risk of kids with like mothers with gestational diabetes, because their pancreas is producing more insulin than they need. So they come out already hyperinsulinemic, day one. And again, go like what I said before, to give yourself grace. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm perfect. And I haven't had a couple bites of cake when we went out to our favorite restaurant once, like it's not to say that you have to, it's not all or nothing. I think that's the other thing to make it realistic and approachable. If, okay, you had a few bites of cake, great, move on. Now go eat something really good for you. And so to really just have that mindset of like, if you can make healthy choices 80% of the time, 90% of the time, like you're doing the best, really good for your baby.
Yeah.
And if it comes, I know everybody says this is the mantra, but if it comes from the periphery of the grocery store and doesn't have a nutrition label, it's probably good.
That's
go
great.
with that. And
kind of going back to like, what did we do before fitness trackers and all this? Like, whatever we were able to find in nature probably wasn't always the optimal food for pregnancy, yet our species has been able to survive. And so I think our bodies are fairly resilient. And so like, I really appreciate her approach of like giving herself some grace, knowing it need not be perfection. Like if humans required perfection, we would have like died off long ago. It's right. Amazing. Like, unfortunately, what I see, like what human bodies are capable of, like continuing to live while putting in them for fuel. I won't call it nutrition. Like, but also remembering that, like, when you're, I say this as the man, but as someone who is pregnant, you're growing a human. Like, you want to provide all the building blocks. You want to give it, as parents, you want to provide the best life for your kid as possible. It starts with pregnancy. It starts with preconception and giving them all of the opportunities to be as vibrant, vibrant, strong human beings as possible. And maybe we're regretting this because our kids never stop running and fighting and punching and playing and wrestling, although it's pretty cool. That's, I think, how human kids should be. And that's our goal for our kids. So
agreed.
And it could be total luck. It could be total confirmation bias. Like,
right.
But thus far, we have been very fortunate that our kids have been really strong, robust, and have not. Neither of us are picky eaters, so I don't. If we're talking epigenetics, our kids got our not picky eater gene, fortunately. So, and
I think you touched on a really important point earlier too. Of like, you can do everything you can, but know that crazy stuff still happens. So for the message to never to be like, if there's a problem, oh, what did you do right or wrong? It's like, you can't control genetics. You can't control certain environmental exposure, a million things that can play a role. So control what you can control and then roll the dice and hope for the best.
Oh, that's that's kids rolling the dice.
I love it. Good improv. No, that's fantastic. I think that's great advice for people who, think they have to have exactly the perfect, birthing plan or whatever. Like, yeah, those things are great, but we also have to understand that, we do have a medical system for a reason, and it's really great for acute care. It's maybe not the best for chronic care, but for an acute situation, it's pretty great. And so we need all of those options. I wanted to talk about the kiddos themselves. They sound very energetic. What is their behavior like?
Depends how much sleep they get and how hungry one of them is. Like, the older one doesn't have hunger cues, so like he won't eat if he's hungry, he won't eat. He'll just get super cranky. The younger one is ironically much more in Dutch of like, I'm not hungry, or I'm hungry, I need to eat. But I would say like their behavior is age appropriate. So like we have two boys, we have a little girl cooking here, so we'll see how she is. But they're rambunctious, they're energetic, they're physical. None of it seems like abnormal, and we don't get a lot of like complaints at school about their behavior, and we don't get a lot of complaints when other people watch them. So that to me is a pretty good sign.
I think anybody with I mean, we know toddlers and preschoolers. So beyond that, of course, I'm not going to speak to children I haven't raised yet. But anybody with that age group will probably laugh when I say they behave so well at school and for other people, and then we wonder what we're doing wrong at home. But we've learned like there's this, they're safer. They're at home is their safe bubble to let those feelings out. So I think as the parents, sometimes we're scratching our heads like, why did they listen so good all day at school, and then they come home and they're just being a little bit crazy? But I think a lot of that, like Cory said, is like that high energy. So we've learned that let them channel that, and then you can just see them calm down. Like if they're getting worked up, we have a pretty like good length of hallway in our house. So we do sprints up and down the hallway. We have them jump up and down off the couch. This is why we have used furniture.
We got one of them, we'll have them do push-ups and jump squats.
Put on roller skates. And so that, I think that high energy is totally normal, but also has to be allowed to come out. Otherwise it does manifest in their behaviors. I mean, it does for all of us when we get tired and frustrated.
Yeah, but at the same time, like around other people, like they're pretty considerate, they're polite. I mean, they're 2 and 5, so as much as you can be considerate and polite. But like, you know, we have the older one at T-ball, the little one goes to the practices, coach says, come take a knee, and the little one will listen and go take a knee with the rest of the team. And he's focused and paying attention, and some of the other kids are, you know, running around, jumping. Our kids will do that too, but like they're capable of that. So we're again very fortunate that yeah, fingers crossed thus far.
We're hopeful we're on the right track.
We're shepherding them in the right direction. But
yeah,
and I like in talking with the teachers at school, I think that they notice a difference in behavior with what we're just going to go back to the same topic, but they notice a difference in behavior with the kids depending on what they're fed. We won't have to go into specifics of the stuff that we would told some of the kids bring or the parents give them for lunch, but it's just sad to think that they're not getting the protein and the nutrition they need. And so it's something that they're not perfect, but I think they're good enough for as old as they are.
Yeah. So not being perfect, letting them have, you know, a treat here and there kind of occasionally. Do you get any sense of like, do they feel deprived? Do they look around and see bright packages that other kids are drinking and bright, you know, juices and sodas and Kool-Aids and Cheetos and all that kind of stuff? We just lost a whole bunch of brand sponsors for the show, unfortunately.
I know you were really pushing hard for the Cheeto sponsorship.
Pushing for the Cheeto one. It's out.
It's gone.
Gone now. Too bad.
That kind of goes back to like this last year being a big growth phase for us, especially with doing T-ball also, because with the sports, if a different parent brings a snack after every game. And so of course
not in control.
We're not in control of that. So prior, like I would say a year and a half ago, our kids' juice wasn't really in their language. Like that didn't mean anything to them. They could see, we could be at a store and there could be a wall of candy and they don't know what it is.
It's just colors to them. Yeah.
Now they're starting to see that a little bit more. And so like they know like what candy is. They've had some and they'll want juice, but I think it's really only when it's like directly in front of them. Because that's just not in their normal day-to-day life. So when we're at home, they never ask for juice.
Yeah.
They might, but if they see a kid at T-ball with a juice box, I want juice because they have one. So it really is more of like a mirroring, but I think we all do that, right? I didn't know I wanted a smartwatch, so everybody else had one, and then I wanted one. I think that's just very normal human nature.
Yeah, those mirror neurons kick in, and they don't have any experience to know otherwise. But like dealing with those situations that like the T-ball, it's twice a week, and then it's on top of whatever they've had that day. And so we get the little baggie, we go through it, and we have some negotiations with them. And generally, if it's a big thing of sugary juice or like even sports drinks are chock full of sugar and artificial dyes for whatever you think they're good, bad, and different. Like those are sort of the non-negotiables for us, but we'll let them have some of the other things. It's not all junk food. Like there's fruit, but then there's like the fruit bars, fruit leathers. Like it's just basically sugar with just fruit without the fiber. So we'll sneakily throw some of those away. Or one time we had to make a sports drink because he really wanted the blue. I won't lose you any more sponsors. It ends in aid. So we got some electrolyte mix and she squeezed some blueberry juice into it after we got home, and he got his blue sports drink. Yeah. So this is where we're a little crazy, but this is our big thing.
Or the other trick was the bottle's like 5 inches tall and I poured out about 4 inches of it. and added water. I took a sip, like you could not taste what it started as. And he was like, I've got my Gatorade. And he was just like so excited to have Gatorade. And it was really like water with a splash of Gatorade, but he didn't know any different and he was happy.
That's amazing. I love that.
But I think this is going to get harder. I think as they get more exposures, they're going to probably have more of those asks, and then it will just kind of stick with that same approach. I think of like, okay, when you're at your friend's house, you can have pizza, and at home we're going to make pizza, and like just keep it.
When you come home and feel crummy, daddy's going to make you do wind sprints and wig.
and we, we haven't really noticed when we do let them have like traditional treats. I haven't noticed a huge behavior shift in them. Like that's something we kind of watch for. Like, does it seem to affect them? It doesn't seem to so far, but that's something to kind of watch out for, so you can bring that back to them if they're old enough. Hey, you ate that candy and then your tummy hurt or whatever you're noticing. Kind of try and make those connections for them.
Yeah. Well, and I think all of us know as adults, once you switch to a low carbohydrate diet, your tastes really do change. Like you lose a lot of your taste for, sugar, sweets, candy, that kind of thing. And I've heard you talk about the ice cream and the ice cream that you make versus the ice cream you've had at the store. And the kids had the quote unquote real ice cream that they got at the store or wherever they got it. And we're like, well, we prefer ours anyway. And I would say objectively, like knowing that my taste buds have changed, but objectively, if you have a bite of candy today, it's pretty gross. It doesn't taste the same as when I was a kid. They're making it differently. Like it's not the same.
No, well, they have to keep upping the sweetness factor. Our dopamine's getting burned out. Like, we have to keep up in the ante. But yeah, I mean, we took them to their credit, like the grandparents got them a gift card to, it's like a really nice local ice cream shop. So we took them there after they had some, doctor's appointment. It wasn't so fun for them. And they had a few bites and they liked it. And they said, we're done. We kind of like the one you make at home more. And we're like, cool. And we didn't make a big deal of it. We didn't, like she said, our goal is to not put a bunch of energy into food at all. Like we don't say, well, we eat healthy and the Johnsons down the street eat garbage food. And that's why they're sick all the time. Like that's going to mess their heads up. And we don't need brainwash them. We just need them to develop those habits. And, like certain grandparents are just like, you're going to have ice cream. Oh my gosh, it's going to be so sweet and so yummy. It's like, please be quiet and just let them have it. And don't put a label on it and let them enjoy it and move on. So that's what we try. And I'll tell you this, as parents, we are not perfect yet. Anyway.
And don't ask us about sleep because we got no tips there.
Yeah, that's our last, that's our next challenge, is getting them to sleep.
I've heard for like at least 6 months after somebody has a baby, you do not ask that question. Just don't ask the question. They're sick of answering it. They're thinking about it all the time. Don't ask.
Yeah. Well, 5 years, going on 5 years, we're still trying to figure out our oldest, getting him to sleep through the night. So.
Well, no, I do think it is triggering to other people. Like we were at a birthday party for my little nephew and they made a cake and you feel a little bit weird, like not having any, but you can find other things to do where people won't even notice. It was easy for me to be the camera guy and take all the pictures of everybody and nobody even really noticed that I didn't have any. So but it does trigger people and they'll try to make it a big deal one way or another. They'll make a big deal when they don't get the cake, or they make a big deal on the one day they do. It sucks.
You don't normally eat that, Cory. Because sometimes, sorry listeners, I sometimes have some cake. Our rule is if it's like a homemade and it's good, like a nice thoughtfully made homemade cake or baked good or whatever, like I will have some. I'm not on the verge of diabetes. I have a little flexibility there, but the store-bought stuff I'm not going to mess with. That's pure chemicals versus hopefully a little less chemicals from the homemade stuff. So
you brought up a great point. That's a good tactic with kids though. We'll do that sometimes at parties when it's like, okay, there's like there's like a whole table full of cupcakes and candy, and we just kind of like steer around it and like we don't tell them you're not having it. We just like, oh gosh, let's go check out the jumping castle right now. And then they don't know. The redirect is a great approach.
Yeah. I mean, we were at a birthday party a couple of weeks ago and they got cupcakes and like, they both tried them and didn't really like the cupcake. We're like, all right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Have another apple or something. They like that. So.
Yeah, you guys, you mentioned Jason Fung and sports and all these occasions, and like we live in this world where you couldn't imagine playing 30 minutes of kickball without having snacks in between every inning, and like it's crazy out there. Well, we've talked a lot about like kind of removing food, and we have talked about like what foods we include in the diet and keep with the kids. You've mentioned protein in particular. What are your favorite like go-to protein options to have on hand that keep the kids interested and kind of full and things they enjoy?
I've gotten pretty creative with eggs because, we have chickens too. So we were like,
That's
They
right.
slowed down, but we were swimming in eggs for a while. So like I'm lucky. My boys for the longest time would just eat eggs every morning, and that's what they asked for. So that made it really easy. But when they start to get sick of it, you scramble them up, cook them in a pan, cut out different shapes. Today we're having egg shapes. We had some leftover pizza sauce and pepperoni. We made egg pizzas. So it was a hard or a fried egg with some pizza sauce and pepperonis and cheese on top.
You make egg muffins.
And make muffins with like a bunch of eggs and just a little bit of flour. So that's kind of like our breakfast is usually surrounding eggs because I like it and they like it. But then other than that, we always have some like little sausage sticks, meat sticks are always in the fridge. Cheese, like little packages of cheese they love. They like they'll just eat pepperoni salami right out of the bag.
Better or worse, whatever your thoughts on processed meat. So we try to buy the cleanest versions of those as we can, but we still feel that's better. Eating that is still better than a lot of the, a pack of air quote fruit snacks. I make these batches of meatballs that they love. I just buy, for all the talk of inflation, I can get ground beef for like $2.50 a pound at the store when it's on sale. It's like 6 pounds worth of meatballs I make, and I cook that for the week. Turkey breast from Costco, they make a great, big old turkey breast there. And then dinner, some combination is, it's ground beef with the organ meats mixed in. We'll do chicken, we'll do pork. They enjoy it.
Yeah, they love salmon.
Yeah.
We don't cook a lot of fish. That's something that we need to get better about, probably.
But my parents, whenever they go to my parents' house, they're getting salmon, deli meat. All of those things are going into their lunches. They love beans. It's not the best protein source, but they like it. It's a whole food. So, so I think we hit all the different proteins that they like. They pretty much like it all, and they know the deal. Like, you want to have a piece of fruit, you have some protein first. Fill you up, and and it's worked so far. Knock on wood, we'll keep working. Like, I'll make jerky too. I like the jerky I make. So,
it sounds as we listed off. I'm like, it's not that many different things, but it
doesn't have to be
tired of it yet. It doesn't have to be complicated.
If it tastes good and it fills you up and is satisfying, it doesn't need to be a wide variety of so many different things. Cassie, you mentioned swimming in eggs. If that ever happens again, you call me. I will drive from Utah down to Tucson to pick up eggs. I can eat 20 in one sitting, and swimming in eggs is like having a package of bacon go expired at a store. It is a problem that should never happen.
Oh, they do like bacon.
The bacon sausage. Yeah. So no, I've seen your social media. It's like 22 eggs, man. I think I need to come up there and we can have an eating contest. So
let's do it.
I would enjoy that.
Should have like a deviled egg feast, like all sorts of varieties of deviled eggs.
Yeah.
So good.
I'm not gonna do 22 of those, but 22 scramble, I could probably throw down.
That's amazing. That's just somebody stopped me at KetoCon. I'd never met him in person. They're like, dude, keep the egg pictures going. So I guess my dick at this point. Have you guys ever done twisted bacon?
No.
Kid favorite. This is great, and it really does make better bacon. Literally take the strips of bacon and twist them up into like a straw. Mm-hmm. It was made by a woman who wanted to fit more bacon onto a cooking sheet so she could take it to a party. But what it did is it creates this like straw of bacon that it is like, it traps kind of the fat on the inside, so it can be like really lipidy. It is delicious. If you cook it longer, it gets more crispy. If you don't cook it as long, it's a little bit more kind of soft, but it's a kid favorite. It is an awesome way to eat them.
And I was just thinking, I don't eat bacon gets so old, so I need to figure out ways to give you. I'm kidding. No, that's awesome. We're going to use that. And I think that's the thing, is being creative with food, but getting back to like it's just a few foods that we eat a lot and kind of modify slightly. Like, I think when you're not feeding them the wide variety of processed food, it goes to that sort of dopamine burnout. Like, you don't have to keep upping the ante with like colors and shapes, and it's just like their body knows it's nourishing and it's good. And if they don't know any different, which is harder and harder to do. But if it's, I was thinking about this in some of the different fast foods, and how like we have the triple burger, we have it covered in bacon, it's wrapped in a chicken carcass. Like, you have to keep doing it because it's not nourishing, healthy food. Whereas like steak is always good. Like, our kids love steak. That's the other one. Yeah. Stupid kids with their expensive.
Well, it's steak for us and grill them hamburgers, and then I'm giving them half my steak and eating their hamburger because they
what a jip.
I'm like,
what a jip.
Yeah.
Unreal.
They're eating it, so I just give it to them.
Yeah.
That's amazing. How have all these experiences impacted your latest book?
For me, it's just a lot of it's just observations. So I like last summer I just started like writing down ideas of things I've noticed as like a parent and things that we've done. And like writing a parenting book, it's like it's bad enough we're here telling people how to eat, but then how to raise your kids and tell them what to eat. Like I'm not here to stir controversy. It's just something that like has worked for two parents. And it really writing it, one of the chapters I have is the hill you die on. As a parent, you only have so much energy, and there's all these things in the world that you're worried about your kids dealing with, coming in contact with, what you care about. And like for us, I say in the book, like you have 2 to 3 hills that you can die on, that you can, like when you tend to the grandparents, when you're with a babysitter, when they're at school, these are the few things that you can focus on. Because if you try to control everything, you're going to drive everyone else crazy and yourself crazy. So for us, I realized like, yeah, food's like number one, and then like the other thing is like screen time, and then like who they're around. So, but like, so that was a huge impact. Like I have a pretty extensive chapter on the Jenks food rules, and I qualify with like, you can call us crazy, but this is, if you've listened to this podcast, you basically got a preview of what that chapter is going to be like.
Beautiful.
So,
That's amazing.
But I just, I don't know, like you write a book to help people, and I just want and this is a book for dads, but I want dads to be capable of cooking for their kids and just nourishing them. Bill Schindler, the speaker at Low Carb Denver, talked a lot about nourishing foods, nourishing your family. He talks about it in his book, and I really took that to heart. I'm like, yeah, we're not nourishing the most important resource we have, which is our children. And so if I could write a book that's funny, that has some other advice, but as you're reading it, you're getting and I threw some simple recipes in there too. Like the recipes are not specific. There's no measurements, because I want to make this as simple as possible. Like a crock pot beef is like beef, salt, broth, boom, 8 hours. It's going to be good. Like you can do this, Dad. And so if we're going to nourish our kids better, they're going to behave better, they're going to be stronger, more robust. That's my goal. And that's sort of the inspiration as part of this next book.
That's amazing. Your first book was amazing. Permission to Care was very well done. Love talking to you about that last time, and I can't wait for this one to come out. I'm sure it's going to be very good and very insightful. I think the saying goes, every child wants an apology and every parent wants a thank you, and nobody gets what they want. So parenting and children can be really tough, but I'm really jealous for these kiddos and the life that they are going to have. Regardless of what they decide to do with their own lives and their own decisions, you're at least laying that groundwork and foundation for them, and providing, if nothing else, an amazing childhood with lots of energy and cool experiences. And it's amazing. It's really inspiring to hear what you guys are doing. It's really inspiring to hear how simple it can be. Doesn't have to be complicated or expensive or any of it. And yeah, when I hear parents say like, I can't do it, it can't be done, it's like, no, it can be done. It might be a little harder, might require a little bit more effort, and you may need to put your foot down sometimes, but it can be done. And it's the kids that are going to benefit from it. And as they're going through grade school and high school, all the classes I fell asleep after lunch in, hopefully they don't have that experience. They're going to be energetic and they're athletic, and I can see that delta just widening and widening with the kids that are being raised properly on the right foods and the ones that unfortunately are not. So I love your work. This has been an amazing conversation. Where can people go to find each of you and connect with you? And or if you don't want anybody to bug you, Cassie, and you can just have your pregnancy and don't worry about it.
People are welcome to reach out to me. I do have a Facebook and an Instagram and a Twitter account. The frequency with which I actually go on that is pretty slim.
I think you're NP Cassie Jenks.
And I think so.
Yeah.
I can tell you
so well for this one.
And I am super happy if people have questions or want to reach out. That's amazing. I'm all for that. Just don't be offended that I don't really engage with that very often.
So you can respond to my text messages, so don't feel bad, strangers who contact her. So, and then if you go to my website, CoryJenks.com, you can find all of my social links from there. And you can email me directly from the website. And if you want to email me to get a hold of my lovely wife, I will not take offense. She is the true rock star. I'm just the one with the books and the internet stuff. So like when we walked around Low Carb Denver, everyone was like, "Oh, Cassie, you work for Virta. I want to talk to you." I'm like, "I'm the MC, folks," and they're like, "Yeah, but your wife." I'm like, "Okay, fine."
Move over.
Yeah, and I guess I just want to end with this. Like we talked a lot about parenting, and I think you made it great that every kid wants an apology, every parent wants to thank you. I write in my book, like, it's not if you're going to screw your kids up, it's how you're going to screw your kids up. So we have that humility to know that in 20, 30 years, they're going to come to us and complain about something we did wrong. And if we can say that we provided the best we could do at the time we had with the information we had, then we'll be able to sleep as well as we can at night. And so I don't, I hope no one takes this podcast away thinking like that we are the experts raising kids and we know what we're doing. We are just like all the other parents doing our best, trying to synthesize all this information and try to raise the best humans we can.
That's so beautifully said. He writes a parenting book, and now he's saying he's not an expert on parenting. Like, what is this?
Well, I think that a little humility in this world can go a long way. Like I'm writing the book with the best of intentions and the best information I have. There's a million experiences I haven't had that Cassie hasn't had with other people being raised, other circumstances. So we can only help from our perspective. But I think if you take lots of advice from lots of perspectives, you're going to be able to craft a pretty cool life for yourself.
I love that. Dude, that's so cool. I really love that. Thank you for sharing that. Both of you, thank you so very much. I know how challenging this was to put together and schedule, and especially a few weeks until your pregnancy. Godspeed with that. Hope that goes super well. Tell the grandparents thanks for watching the kiddos today. And thank you both for taking the time to have this conversation. It was really meaningful and positive, and I really appreciate both of you doing it.
Well, thank you again for having me back and having her on for the first time.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. It was such an honor. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.